Flashlights sliced through the dark like knives. Guards barked orders, their beams bouncing off wet concrete. The air was thick with panic. Rows of prisoners lay flat, trembling, hands over their heads. But one space was empty, Santos's. Whereas 41,762, a voice shouted. No one replied. The floor where he'd been was cold. His chains lay open, untouched. In the control room, emergency lights flickered on, revealing screens full of static. One monitor showed a faint figure walking down the hall, barefoot, head bowed, surrounded by steam. "Freeze it," the warden ordered. The technician obeyed, hands shaking. The image froze mid-frame. The man's face was barely visible, but his shadow stretched unnaturally long. "That's him," whispered the guard. "But it can't be." Inside the CECOT control room, chaos erupted like wildfire. Screens flickered between static and ghostly images. Corridors half-lit, shadows stretching and vanishing. Technicians slammed keyboards, trying to restore the feed, while radios hissed with fragments of terrified voices. "We've lost contact with Wing C," one guard shouted. The warden, Colonel Ramos, stood frozen, sweat crawling down his temple. He'd seen riots, he'd seen death, but never silence this heavy, never darkness this alive. Then one screen blinked to life. A single camera feed showed the corridor outside Santos' cell. Empty at first, then a faint silhouette emerged, walking slowly toward the lens. No sound, no motion from the guards, just that figure, barefoot, head bowed. The warden leaned closer, heart pounding. "Freeze the frame," he whispered. When they did, the man's face came into view for a split second, enough to send a chill through the room. It was Santos, but his eyes reflected no light, as if something inside him had gone completely black. The warden's voice echoed to the prison intercom. "Lockdown Protocol Omega. All units mobilize." Sirens wailed. Red light spun like bleeding halos along the walls. Doors slammed shut in perfect mechanical rhythm, trapping guards and inmates alike in a maze of iron and concrete. Boots thundered through hallways as search teams swept each block. 41,762 is missing. I repeat, missing, the radio crackled. No one believed it. In CECOT, nothing went missing. Through the chaos, guards moved in formation, their flashlights slicing the dark like lasers. Every cell they opened reeked of sweat, fear, and confusion. But Santos was nowhere. "He couldn't have gone far," muttered the deputy. No one escaped CECOT. The warden didn't answer. His eyes stayed locked on the corridor camera, watching as the static distorted, bending the light around that faint silhouette. Somewhere deep down, he knew this wasn't just an escape. This was a message. By midnight, the prison had fallen into a strange rhythm, a hum beneath the chaos. It began faintly, like the murmur of air through the vents. Then it grew, a low, rhythmic sound, not speech, but something older, heavier, almost ritualistic. Guards froze mid-step. "Do you hear that?" one whispered. The sound echoed down the corridors, weaving through concrete, crawling into the skin. In every cell, prisoners sat upright, their mouths closed, but the hum continued, as if the walls themselves were singing. Fear rippled through the guards. Radios crackled with overlapping shouts. All sectors report. Identify source of the chant. But there was no source. It came from everywhere and nowhere. In her office, Lucia Herrera, the psychologist assigned to monitor inmate behavior, pressed her palms to the desk, feeling the vibration beneath her feet. The sound was alive. And for the first time since entering CECOT, she was truly afraid. When the alarms finally died, Lucia was ordered to document the event. She walked the empty corridors flanked by 2 armed guards, clipboard trembling in her hands. "I'm not trained for this," she whispered. The air smelled of ozone and metal, the scent of machines after lightning. Prisoners stared at her through bars, eyes reflecting the dim emergency lights like animals in a cave. "Do you pray?" one inmate muttered. She kept walking. When she reached Santos' cell, she stopped cold. The door hung slightly open, though no override had been triggered. Inside, the air was still heavy, charged. On the wall, written in soot, were 2 words. "The storm waits." Her pen slipped from her fingers. "Ma'am?" one guard asked. But Lucia didn't answer. She just stared at the words, her reflection faintly trembling in the cell's dark window. Somewhere behind her, thunder rolled again, like the echo of laughter. Hours later, the hum returned. This time, it was louder, unified, hundreds of voices rising and falling in rhythm, not singing but vibrating. It was a sound defiance turned to faith. Guards covered their ears, shouting over the noise. "Shut it down," ordered Ramos. But how do you silence a sound that comes from stone? The floor itself seemed to pulse with it. Prison lights flickered, then dimmed again, casting the corridors into a red haze. Lucia watched from behind reinforced glass, heart pounding. "They're not chanting," she whispered. "They're resonating." She realized the pitch matched the hum of the generators. Every time the prisoners exhaled, the lights trembled. It wasn't random, it was communication. Whether between men or between something deeper, no one knew. But one thing was certain. CECOT, the prison built to silence evil, had begun to speak. At 2:43 a.m., the call reached the presidential palace. "Mr. President," said the officer, voice shaking, "we have a situation inside CECOT." Bukele didn't flinch. He sat in silence, watching the footage of the blackout on a massive screen. "Is it contained?" he asked. "Not yet, sir." One inmate vanished. A pause. "Vanished," Bukele repeated, as if testing the word's weight. "In CECOT, nothing vanishes." Within the hour, a helicopter lifted off from San Salvador toward the coast. Inside, Bukele stared out the window at the dark horizon. The city lights flickered far below, orderly, obedient. But beyond them, the prison loomed like a wound glowing faintly under lightning. His reflection in the glass looked tired, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. Whatever was happening inside CECOT wasn't just a malfunction. It was a challenge, and he would meet it himself. At dawn, the helicopter descended over CECOT's compound. Soldiers lined the perimeter like chess pieces. The president stepped out, coat billowing in the wind, face unreadable. Cameras followed his every move. This was a performance as much as an inspection. "Where is he?" he asked the warden. "Gone, sir," Ramos replied. "We checked every cell, every vent. He's nowhere." Bukele's expression didn't change. "Then find somewhere else." He walked down the main corridor, where prisoners knelt in rows, heads bowed, silent as statues. For a moment, the light from the high windows caught his face, calm, almost divine. To his followers, he was the man who conquered fear. To his enemies, he was fear itself. When he reached Santos' empty cell, he paused, staring at the black words still scrawled on the wall. "The storm waits." "Erase it," he ordered. No traces. But even as the guards scrubbed the wall, the words refused to fade completely. In the administrative wing, Lucia was summoned. She stood before the president, notebook in hand, eyes downcast. "What did he say to you?" Bukele asked. She hesitated. "He told me the walls remember." The room fell silent. Bukele leaned forward slightly. "Then make them forget." He turned and walked away, leaving her trembling. It was not a request. It was an order disguised as mercy. After the meeting, Lucia sat alone in her office. Her hands shook as she replayed the events. The chanting, the blackout, the message on the wall. Logic offered no comfort. She began writing her report, each line more surreal than the last. But before she finished, the power flickered again, just once, and the words on her screen rearranged themselves as if typed by invisible hands. They read, "He remembers you too." Lucia slammed the laptop shut. The hum had returned. Later that day, technicians recovered a fragment of video from the blackout. The feed was distorted, filled with static, but one sequence stood out. Frame 1234, timestamp 2:16 a.m., showed Santos standing alone, shirtless, staring into security camera. His lips moved. The audio was dead, but analysts enhanced it until a faint phrase emerged through the hiss. "The storm waits." The president watched the clip in silence. "Delete it," he said finally, but the file didn't delete. Every time they tried, it duplicated itself, appearing in new folders under different names. Finally, it was moved to a classified archive labeled Internal Anomaly, Do Not Access. The technicians signed non-disclosure forms. Weeks later, 2 of them resigned without explanation. One of them claimed he still heard the hum in his sleep. By evening, the power was restored, the cameras reset, and the news reported technical maintenance. The world saw only calm, rows of prisoners crouched under bright floodlights, soldiers standing tall, the president framed as a hero. Order, once again, had been restored. But beneath the surface, things were changing. Guards whispered of flickering lights, of shadows that move without men. Lucia tendered her resignation a week later. She left her badge on the desk and drove toward the coast, the radio off, the hum of the engine masking her thoughts. In the rearview mirror, the gray outline of CECOT faded into mist. She told herself she'd forget. But some nights, she woke to the faint sound of chanting carried by the wind, a rhythm that didn't belong to the world of the living. And each time, she whispered the same word Santos once did. It begins again. Within 24 hours, the government launched its media counteroffensive. New footage flooded the internet. High-definition clips of soldiers patrolling spotless corridors, guards smiling, prisoners kneeling in perfect formation. A narrator's voice declared, "Order has been restored at CECOT." Every major channel echoed the same phrase. The public nodded in approval. El Salvador was safe again. But inside the editing rooms, the truth had teeth. Journalists whispered about missing frames, corrupted archives, and government orders to destroy raw footage. One reporter from a local outlet claimed to have seen the uncut version, one that showed something moving during the blackout. Days later, his story was deleted and his press credentials revoked. The official message was clear. The world would only see what was allowed to. The hum that once rattled the prison walls had now escaped into the frequencies of silence. Lucia Herrera packed her belongings into a small box, a notebook, her ID, and a pen that still smelled faintly of disinfectant and fear. Her hands trembled as she set her keys on the desk. The office that once represented order now felt like a cage. She'd written her final report, but the words felt useless. Ghosts on paper. CECOT remains operational, she wrote, but something inside it has changed. She didn't dare elaborate. As she drove toward the coast, the sky bled orange with sunset. The air outside the city tasted different, clean, alive. She rolled down her window and closed her eyes. For the first time in months, she heard the sound of the ocean. But just as she reached the old highway bridge, her radio flickered to life. Static, then a faint voice whispering through the interference. "The storm waits." Lucia slammed the radio off, heart pounding. The sea wind howled through her open window, carrying with it a faint hum, the same rhythm she swore she'd left behind. 1 week later, a strange video appeared online, uploaded under an unlisted link. The thumbnail was grainy, the title blank. Viewers who clicked saw black and white footage of a corridor inside CECOT. The timestamp matched the night of the blackout. For a few seconds, nothing moved. Then, a vent grill at the end of the hallway began to warp, bending outward like metal under heat. The camera shook, static flickered. And then, a hand emerged. It wasn't human, too pale, too thin, the fingers elongated as it burned. The feed cut to black after just 7 seconds. But by then, thousands had seen it. The channel name read, Santos _resurrected. Within minutes, the video was deleted, but the internet had already done what it does best. Copied, shared, multiplied. By dawn, it was everywhere. Governments called it fake. Experts called it digital manipulation. But those who had seen the real CECOT footage knew. The frame, the lighting, the timestamp, it all matched. In the presidential office, Bukele watched the viral clip in silence. His advisor spoke in panic. "We can track the IP. It's fake. We'll issue a takedown." He raised his hand, silencing them all. The glow from the monitor cast long shadows across his face. "He's not alive," he said finally. "No one leaves CECOT." But even as he said it, something in his voice wavered. That night, he ordered a full system purge. Every digital record, every surveillance backup, every classified file from the blackout night erased. But at 3:17 a.m., when technicians tried to execute the command, the servers refused to comply. Lines of code rewrote themselves, looping endlessly. The words of storm weights began appearing across every terminal in rhythmic sequence. It wasn't an error, it was a presence. Weeks later, one surviving technician spoke anonymously to a journalist. His voice shook through the phone. "I was there," he said. "When we tried to erase the file, the room got cold, like a freezer. Every monitor went white. Then, I saw him." The journalist asked who. The man took a long breath. "Santos, or something wearing him." He looked straight at the camera feed, like he could see us through it. And then the power cut. The journalist pressing for proof, but the technician refused to share any files. "You don't understand," he whispered. "It's not just data. It spreads." Before hanging up, he added one last thing. "Every time I close my eyes, I still hear the hum. It's not from the prison anymore. It's from inside me." Days later, he disappeared. His apartment was found empty, lights still on, radio static humming quietly through the night. Back in the slums of San Salvador, people began hearing it again, the low vibration that shook walls and rattled glass. At first, it was blamed on distant thunder or power lines. But those who lived near the old prison routes swore the sound came from beneath the ground. Shopkeepers claimed lights flickered whenever someone mentioned Santos' name. In one neighborhood, graffiti appeared overnight. "He walks again." Lucia saw it too one morning while buying coffee. The words were written in black paint across a bus stop wall. Her blood ran cold. That night, she dreamed of CECOT, its endless corridors, the smell of metal, the flicker of dying lights. She woke up gasping, the echo of the hum vibrating in her ears. On her nightstand, her phone screen glowed with notification. New message from Santos_resurrected. When she opened it, there was no text, only an audio file. A faint whisper said, "Even hell has a way out." Days later, Lucia made a decision she couldn't explain. She drove back toward the fortress. Rain lashed the windshield, thunder splitting the sky. The roads leading to CECOT were barricaded, but she parked on a hill overlooking the compound. The prison lights shimmered like dying stars, flickering one by one. She sat in silence, gripping the steering wheel, heart pounding. Then movement. A lone figure walking along the outer wall, barefoot, head bowed. Lightning flashed. It was him. She stumbled out of the car, rain soaking her through. "Santos!" she shouted into the wind. The figure stopped but didn't turn. The hum rose again, shaking the ground. Her vision blurred. The air felt electric. Then, the prison lights went out completely, plunging everything into blackness. In the distance, a voice, soft, calm, almost familiar, whispered, "It begins again." When the lights flickered back on, the wall was empty. The figure was gone. Only her reflection remained in the glass. 2 weeks later, the world awoke to another video, this time uploaded on every platform at once. It began the same way the first did, silenced in a corridor. The camera moved forward, revealing the same endless line of prisoners kneeling, heads down. But at the end of the hall stood Santos, bare-chested, eyes glowing faintly white. The caption read, "CECOT, the Center for Confinement of Terrorism." Then the camera turned impossibly as if controlled by something unseen and showed the control room. Every monitor displayed the same message. "The storm waits no more." The feed cut to black. Panic erupted online. Government scrambled, but no trace of the uploader could be found. When investigators checked the original servers, they found only silence and a faint humming in the data logs. Somewhere deep beneath the concrete, where light no longer reached, something had awakened, and though CECOT remained locked, the world outside had already begun to tremble.